that they've done in doing this. If you give me 15 minutes, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the Crime Prevention Research Center and what we've done. One comment that I can't help is, I think if you put Ted and myself together, you can maybe get like an average person. As Ted says, you know, it's kind of, it's amazing we can both be on the same side on some of the stuff. When we have our board of director meetings, just Ted, I mean, we could just tape the board of director meetings and sell them. I think, just for
let's do it.
Yeah. Well, so, you know, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we've done recently, just to give you an idea. We had a report that just came out a couple weeks ago that dealt with this FBI data on mass shootings. And they had, if you looked at it, and they've got major coverage in a lot of places, if you look at their claims, they were saying from 2000 to 2013, there was this huge explosion in mass shootings that was going up by about 16.5% per year. The problem is that they actually missed about 20 mass shootings, and almost all of them were at the beginning of the period. At the end of the period here, they're including what they call these active shooter cases. And what those can be is something where somebody fires a gun in public, nobody's shot, nobody's wounded or killed, and they use Google News searches to go and get this data. Here's the problem with it. I'll just explain it simply. Let's say I had a mass shooting where 4 people were killed a week ago, and I do a Google News search. Maybe I get like 800 stories on it. If I wait 5 years and go a Google News search, maybe I get 500 stories on the same case, because links are broken, websites get closed down, things get changed. If I wait 10 years, maybe I'll get 300 stories on that same case. Well, if I had 4 people killed, there's still going to be enough stories that I'm going to be able to get coverage on it. Well, let's say I have news coverage of a gun fired in public where nobody's shot. You're going to be lucky to get 1 story to begin with. I go back 1 week, I may get it. I go back 5 years, there's a good chance that that story is not going to be able to be picked up by Google News searches. If I go back 10 years, there's a high probability it's not going to be there.
Google is anti-gun.
Well, that's true too. So the thing is, it's not that there aren't these cases where somebody fires a gun in public and nobody get killed 10, 13 years ago. It's just that you're only picking up the recent cases. And so you miss cases to begin with, and then you include this active shooter measure where you're only getting cases at the end of this period. It's going to make it look like there's a big increase. When we do it right, I think looking at cases where 2 or more people are killed, it's basically flat. You'll get cases where there's 3 or more, it gets even flatter. Another thing that we just did in the last couple of weeks, Bloomberg is having, he's not only putting out this data with his hundreds of millions of dollars that he's putting out there, but he's also going and having the Columbia Journalism School bring in reporters from around the country to help teach them how to go and talk about gun control issues. And the academics, all the academics that they have are all on one side of the issue. You would hope journalism schools would at least teach journalists that they should cover both sides of the issue. 13 of the 15 total that they have are clearly on one side of the issue here. We have another study we put out last year was just saying that there were 11 million permit holders, now it's 12 million in the United States. And while this just gives you a rough idea, it's better to look at individual states. You can see what's happened to the percentage of the adult population with concealed handgun permits, this bottom line here, and what's happened to murder rates or violent crime rates above there. Just give you an idea of some of the stuff we do behind the scenes. Obama had this speech a few weeks ago at a university, and I basically contacted Glenn Kessler, who does the fact check at the Washington Post, and I got him to go and analyze these types of quotes. One quote was, "We also have to recognize that our homicide rates are so much higher than homicide rates in other industrialized countries. I mean by like a mile. And most of that is attributable to the easy, readily availability of particular firearms." You know, you look at Glenn Kessler, we were able to get him to go and mention that, look, there are all these other developed countries that have higher homicide rates than the United States, but more importantly, If you look at the relationship between gun ownership and homicides, it's actually a negative relationship, and that's despite the fact that we're using this small arms survey out of Switzerland, which is incredibly biased. They have Israel supposedly only has a gun ownership rate of less than 1/10 of the U.S. How many people have been to Israel? Do you believe that the gun ownership rate in Israel is less than 1/10 of the gun ownership rate in the United States? I mean, it's absurd. But what they do is they only count as gun owned if it's privately owned. In Israel, the government technically owns most of the guns. You apply for it. You may be able to go and have the same gun for 50 years, but the government technically owns them. If the issue is whether people should possess guns or not, it doesn't matter who technically owns it. It's whether or not citizens are able to go and protect it, or are able to use it. And if you were to go and fix Switzerland and Israel, this line would be much more negative than it is, because they'd be way out there, probably higher rates than the United States. You know, we try to go and do things like have things in the Chicago Tribune, the New York Daily News, a couple of the pieces that we've had here recently, give talks at universities. And it's just not myself. I have to go and thank the other people in our group who have done work. We have Brett Jesse, who is a PhD in biochemistry. He's put out some letters. He had one recently in the Annals of Internal Medicine. We have Jack McCauley, who used to run the concealed carry operations in the state of Maryland and resigned when the governor basically ordered him not to give out more concealed handgun programs. And we have Arthur Berg, who's a psychiatrist at Harvard, one of the people on our academic board of advisors who's done work with us. We had just on Thursday, yesterday, we had a survey that came out on economists around the world who had actually published research in economics journals, empirical work on it, showing that the vast majority of economists think that having guns make people safer. And we've done work, this is some articles I've had in Australia with one of our fellows, Keston Green. Now I just want to give you some idea. Glenn was talking about being optimistic, and I do think that there's definitely reasons to be optimistic. I'll just show you, there's several polls, Pew, Gallup, CNN, had polls over time to show how people's views on guns have changed. And this is from Pew. You can see, basically, going into the 90s, the percent of people who supported gun control was increasing. And then when you get to the late 90s, it started to fall, kind of going up and down a little bit. But generally, after the late 90s, there's this general decline. People opposing gun control has generally gone up. Why is that? Well, I think if you look at other surveys, I think you can get some ideas for why this is changing. One, a lot of people, if you ask them why do they own guns, now it's personal protection. That's gone up a lot if you look at surveys over the last 40 years. But if you break it down and look at some of the survey questions you see, this is from Gallup. I think this really tells you a lot. I wish they had this before 2000. But they asked people a question, do guns in the home make you safer? In 2000, only 35% of Americans said owning a gun in the home made you safer. Now, it's 63%. That's pretty amazing. And I think that moves in exactly the same relationship we see with these other polls where people are opposing gun control at the time. The Pew has its own survey question. It doesn't go back very far at all, but it at least shows over recently, do guns protect people from crime or put them at risk? And you can see just in the last couple of years, there's been this sea change where it was a little bit less than half, and now it's 57% of people saying that owning a gun on net makes them safer. Now, it's not just the $50 million a year that Bloomberg puts into every town. He's spending hundreds of millions of dollars on funding gun research. You have 23 large foundations that are funding it. You have Soros. You have the Obama administration not just using the FBI that we have, but other things. And you can see this in radio ads, but it's the research that I don't think a lot of people see. And I'll just show you a graph here. If you listen to the media, they say that after 1969, when the CDC had restrictions on being able to go and fund gun research, that gun research in medical journals disappeared. Well, that's hardly the case. This is 1969. So this is the number, in blue is the number of journal articles on firearms, and the red is the number of editorials. This claim that research disappeared was basically because of a Bloomberg study, where what they did was they looked at firearms journal articles as a percentage of all medical journal articles. The problem is, firearm journal articles actually increased by 2013, which was the last year that they had covered. But the thing is, medical journal articles on other areas increased even more. So it's kind of hard to go and say medical journal research on firearms disappeared. But you can see here, just in the last couple years, 2012, 2013, I think 2014 is going to show an even bigger increase. This is just the beginning of the tidal wave that you're going to be seeing. Next year, in 2016, you're going to see a massive amount of firearms research coming out of this public health type area. I could go on for a long time, but just to give you an idea of what's ahead. This is just a survey that was released a week ago by David Hemingway of mainly public health researchers around the country. And they would ask questions like, in the United States, guns are used in self-defense far more often than they are used in crime. And public health researchers, you have about almost 30% strongly disagree, about 33% disagree. Now, you can see here, not only are they limiting it to public health, but look at how they feel they have to ask the question far more often. You know, why didn't they just ask on net, is there benefit? Do people use guns defensively more to stop crime, or are guns used more to commit crime? Gary Mauser from Simon Fraser did a survey of economists around the world for us, and he asked the question, I think, in a straighter way. In the United States, are guns used in self-defense more often than they're used in the commission of crime? If you include the leaners here, it's 88% of North American researchers said, of economists who publish in econ journals, they actually publish empirical work. The other people that they included just had the word firearms in their articles. Didn't even have to do empirical work to be included. And even if you look around the world, with leaders, 83% say that guns are more likely to be used in self-defense than they are in the commission of crimes. This is economists. The Hemingway survey from Harvard, which again got a fair amount of publicity a week or so ago, asked the question, the change in state-level concealed carry laws in the United States over the past few decades, from more restrictive to more permission, had reduced crime. And most of these public health researchers disagree. But look at the way they phrase this. They say, reduce crime. We decided to go and ask the question a little bit differently. We asked, does it reduce crime, have no effect, or does it increase? If you look at North American researchers, there's not one economist who was saying that it increased violent crime in any way, or increased murders. If you include economists outside the United States, you get a small percentage here. But you can just see the way they put the questions together. Far more often, or reduced rather than breaking it down, because they know that they're going to get a lot of people who say there's no effect, but they can make it look more negative by not breaking it out and essentially showing that nobody, because the debate among academics is between those who say there's a benefit and a smaller group that says that it has no effect. Nobody is seriously really arguing that it increases murders. So I just give you a couple other questions from the surveys. This is permit holders are more law-abiding. This is among economists. Here you get 91% of those with leaners in North America say that permit holders are much more law-abiding than the average person. And this is for gun-free zones, what Ted was basically talking about. You can see with leaners, it's 90% better. It's important to accurately measure both the cost as well as the benefits of people owning guns. And I think ultimately, for people in the middle debate who are willing to trade off freedom for safety, the issue that you can't concede the issue and the claims about whether or not owning a gun makes people safer. I really appreciate everybody coming here. It's been amazing. I can't tell you how much it's meant to me. And to John Whitley, John, can you stand up? Where are you? Can you stand up? John Whitley's our research director. before joining us, John was the research director at Department of Homeland Security for a few years. And anyway, I really greatly appreciate your time and people joining us. Thank you very much.